You've been lied to your entire life. They told you to save money, get a job, play it safe, and invest in a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. But what if I told you that exact advice is why most people will never become rich, and why recessions are the greatest gift the wealthy ever received? In 2008, while millions were panicking, I borrowed $300 million and became wealthier than ever. Sounds insane, right? But I didn't do it by chance. I followed a formula, and I'm going to walk you through it. Hello, I'm Robert Kiyosaki, entrepreneur, investor, and author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I built wealth during a recession. This isn't theory. I'm not here to give you textbook advice written by a guy who's never owned a business. I'm going to show you what I actually did. I'm going to tell you why I used debt to get rich while others were getting wiped out. Why I don't save money and never will. Why recessions are opportunities, not disasters. And how I turned one of the worst economic crashes in modern history into the biggest financial leap of my life. So, if you're tired of working hard, paying taxes, and getting nowhere, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. They told you to go to school, get good grades, find a secure job, save money, and invest in a well-diversified portfolio of mutual funds. Sounds responsible, right? But that advice is exactly why most people are broke, stuck in debt, and living paycheck to paycheck. It's a trap, and the worst part is they taught it to you like it was gospel. Let me tell you what they didn't teach you. In 1971, President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. That one move changed everything. From that moment on, money was no longer backed by anything real. It became paper, fake money, printed by governments and manipulated by central banks. And guess what? They didn't update the school textbooks. They kept teaching you the same game with outdated rules. So now you're working harder, trying to save money, and watching the value of that money go down every single day. You think you're being smart by saving, but inflation is eating away your purchasing power. Your dollars are literally becoming worth less and less. That's not an opinion, that's math. And while your bank pays you 1% interest, the real inflation rate is 5%, 8%, sometimes even higher. You're losing money by doing exactly what they told you to do. Meanwhile, the rich aren't saving money, they're borrowing it. They're using debt to buy assets that produce cash flow and hedge against inflation. Real estate, gold, oil, cattle, businesses, things that hold value and put money in their pocket whether the market goes up or down. That's the real game. But you were never invited to that game. You were taught to be a good employee, a good saver, and a loyal taxpayer. The system wasn't built to make you rich, it was built to use you. Until you unlearn what they taught you and start thinking like the wealthy, you'll keep running on the hamster wheel wondering why you're not getting ahead. Most people wake up every morning to trade their time for money. They punch a clock, work 8 to 10 hours a day, and at the end of the month, they get a paycheck. That's the cycle. That's the trap. And they think that's the only way to make money, because that's what they've been taught since they were kids. But here's what no one tells you. The rich don't work for money. They work to build assets that generate income, whether they're working or not. When I was young, my poor dad, who had a PhD and a government job, told me to work hard, get promoted, and save. My rich dad, who didn't finish school, told me something different. If you have to work for money, you're not free. That one sentence changed my life. See, employees are stuck in the rat race. They earn, they spend, they pay taxes, and they repeat that cycle for 40 years. But the rich, they don't chase paychecks. They build cash-flowing assets, businesses, real estate, royalties, and investments that pay them again and again, long after the initial work is done. They create something once, and it pays them for life. That's why I write books. Not because I love writing, but because a book is an asset. I sell one, I get paid. I sell 1 million, I get paid 1 million times. Same with real estate. I buy a building, the rent comes in every month whether I wake up early or sleep in. The middle class works harder every year for less. They believe a raise or a promotion is the goal, not realizing it just puts them in a higher tax bracket. The wealthy don't work harder, they work smarter. They know the real game isn't about trading time for money. It's about creating systems that make money flow to you, not from you. If you want to escape the rat race, you need to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like a creator. That's the first rule of wealth. Most people hear the word recession and they panic. They cut back spending, hoard cash, and pray their job doesn't disappear. But when I hear recession, I get excited, because I know what's coming. Opportunity. See, while the masses are running scared, the rich are sharpening their knives. Recessions are when wealth changes hands. And if you're prepared, it's the easiest time to build real wealth. In 2008, when the markets were crashing and people were screaming about the end of the world, I borrowed $300 million to buy real estate. Everyone thought I was crazy. But guess what? The prices were slashed, sellers were desperate, and banks were practically giving away properties. That crash made me richer than any boom ever did. Recessions wipe out the pretenders. They reveal who actually understands money and who's been faking it. Over-leveraged house flippers, trendy tech startups with no cash flow, overbuilt developers, they all get crushed. And what do the rich do? They wait, they study, and when the time is right, they buy. Dirt cheap. Because during a crash, assets don't disappear, they just change owners. But here's the trick. You don't wait for a recession to start preparing. You get educated during the boom. You build your team, raise capital, learn the game, and position yourself so that when the crash hits, and it always does, you're not scared. You're ready. That's how the rich play. The people who suffer in recessions are the ones who followed traditional advice. They saved cash while inflation ate it. They bought liabilities thinking they were assets. And they stayed dependent on a paycheck that vanished overnight. Recessions are like clearance sales for the wealthy. Everything goes on discount. Stocks, real estate, gold, even entire businesses. If you understand cash flow and how to use debt strategically, a recession isn't something to fear. It's the chance of a lifetime. But only if you're thinking like a capitalist, not a consumer. Most people are terrified of debt. They've been taught that it's dangerous, irresponsible, and something to avoid at all costs. That's why they stay poor. They're using debt the wrong way. The poor borrow money to buy things that don't make them richer. Cars, gadgets, vacations. The rich, we use debt to get rich. And not only that, we use it to pay zero in taxes. During the 2008 crash, I borrowed $300 million. Sounds insane, right? Everyone else was trying to pay off their mortgages, get out of debt, or file for bankruptcy. Meanwhile, I was calling banks and asking how much property I could buy. Why? Because I understood something most people don't. Debt is one of the most powerful financial tools on earth, when you know how to use it. I didn't borrow that money to go shopping. I borrowed it to buy income-producing real estate, apartment complexes, commercial buildings, assets that put cash in my pocket every single month. And because the economy was in free fall, I was buying at 30, 40, sometimes 50 cents on the dollar. I locked in low interest rates and created instant equity. That's not spending, that's wealth creation. But here's the real kicker. Because of how the tax code is written, I didn't just make money, I kept it. The government gives massive tax incentives to people who create housing and jobs. So when I buy a property, I get to depreciate it. That means on paper, it looks like I'm losing money, even though I'm collecting rent every month. And because the money came from loans, not income, I don't pay taxes on it. Debt is tax-free money. Poor people fear debt because they've never been taught the difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt makes you richer. Bad debt makes you a slave. If you want to be wealthy, you need to stop running from debt and start learning how to use it like a weapon. That $300 million wasn't a burden. It was the reason I got rich during the worst crash in modern history. They told you to save money. They said it was smart, responsible, the key to security. But what they didn't tell you is this. When you save money, you're making the banks richer, and yourself poorer. You're playing a game that's rigged from the start, and you're losing without even knowing it. Here's how it works. When you deposit money into a bank, you think it's sitting there, safe, but it's not. Under the fractional reserve system, the bank is only required to keep a tiny fraction of your money, maybe 10%, and they lend out the rest. That means if you put in $1,000, they can lend $9,000 off your deposit. They're creating money out of thin air while you earn next to nothing. Back in the day, maybe you earned 5% interest on your savings. Today, if you're lucky, you get 1%. But inflation is at 5%, 8%, maybe higher. So your money is losing value every single day it sits in the bank. You think you're playing it safe. In reality, you're getting robbed. Silently, legally. And the worst part? They still tax you on that 1% interest like it's income. So not only is your money devaluing, you're also paying taxes on gains that barely exist. It's like getting mugged, then handed a bill for the experience. Meanwhile, the banks are using your money to make loans at much higher rates: mortgages, car loans, credit cards. They collect the interest, they grow their balance sheets, and they laugh all the way to, well, the bank. This is why savers are losers. Not because saving is inherently bad, but because saving fiat currency, money that's being printed into oblivion, is a guaranteed path to poverty. The rules changed in 1971 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. Since then, the dollar has lost over 90% of its purchasing power. So while you're saving, the value of what you're saving is disappearing. The wealthy don't save paper, they save assets. They put their money into things that hedge against inflation: real estate, gold, businesses, cash flow. If you want to win in this game, stop playing by the rules written for you. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as it was designed. Just not for you. I don't trust paper, I never have. Not paper money, not stocks, not promises from Wall Street salesmen telling you to diversify into mutual funds. I trust what I can touch. I trust real assets: gold, silver, real estate, oil, cattle, the stuff God isn't making more of, the stuff you can feel in your hands. Because when the economy crashes, and it will, paper gets burned. But hard assets? They survive, they produce, they pay. Most people invest in paper and hope it goes up. They sit in front of screens watching numbers bounce around like a casino ticker. And when things crash, they panic. They sell at a loss. They beg the Fed to save them. That's not investing. That's gambling. Real wealth is built on things that don't vanish with a stock market dip. Take gold and silver. They've been money for thousands of years. No central bank, no president, no global crisis has ever erased their value. When paper currencies collapse, and they always do, gold stands firm. That's why I've been stacking it since the 70s. Real estate? I don't flip houses. I buy cash-flowing apartments. When people lose their homes in a crash, where do they go? They rent. And when they rent, I collect income. Oil? It fuels the world. No oil, no food, no shipping, no economy. I don't invest in Exxon. I invest in oil wells. I want the asset, the source, not some Wall Street version of it. Even cattle. People laugh when I say I own Wagyu bulls. But you know what? That bull doesn't care what the stock market's doing. He's still producing. He's still valuable. That's the point. Tangible assets don't care about headlines or panic or Fed speeches. They work. If your foundation is built on paper, you're one crash away from watching everything disappear. But when your foundation is made of real income-producing, inflation-proof assets, you sleep differently at night. You don't fear recessions. You wait for them. Because real assets don't just protect wealth, they build it. Quietly, steadily, and forever. The average person thinks the tax code is punishment, a list of rules designed to take as much of their paycheck as possible. But that's only true if you're playing the wrong game. The wealthy don't see the tax code as punishment. They see it as a playbook, a list of incentives, rewards, and loopholes designed to help them get richer. And the best part? It's all completely legal. People get angry when they hear someone like me say, I pay little to no taxes. But instead of asking how we do it, they just complain. The truth is, the government wants you to pay less in taxes if you're doing things that help the economy. If you create jobs, provide housing, or invest in energy, they'll reward you for it. That's not cheating. That's strategy. Take real estate. When I buy a property, I get to depreciate it. That means I can deduct the wear and tear of the building over time, even though it might actually be going up in value. On paper, it looks like I'm losing money, even while I'm collecting rent every single month. And because I used debt to buy the property, I didn't use my own taxed income. I borrowed tax-free money to build cash flow. Then there's business. Every time I fly to check on a property, every dinner with my team, every meeting with my lawyer or accountant, those are business expenses. I don't pay tax on that money because it's not income. It's part of the operation. The tax code isn't written to help employees. It's written for investors and entrepreneurs because we solve problems. We provide housing. We build businesses. We stimulate the economy. So the government gives us incentives to keep doing it. If you're paying high taxes, it's not because you're being punished. It's because you're playing the employee game with the wrong set of rules. The wealthy didn't write the tax code, but we understand it. And once you learn the rules, you can stop working harder and start working smarter. The goal isn't to evade taxes. The goal is to be smart enough that you don't owe them in the first place. I grew up with two dads. One had a PhD, a stable job, and believed in job security. The other didn't finish high school, but he built businesses and owned real estate. One worked for money. The other made money work for him. One taught me to get a safe, secure job with a pension. The other taught me to build assets, create cash flow, and never depend on a paycheck. That contrast changed my life and exposed the truth. School doesn't teach you to be rich. It teaches you to be obedient. Our education system was designed during the industrial age to produce workers, factory employees who followed orders, didn't question authority, and traded time for money. That system is still in place today. You're taught to memorize, follow rules, get good grades, and then hope someone hires you. But nobody teaches you how to manage money, build wealth, or invest. They tell you to save, not to multiply. They train you for security, not freedom. My poor dad was proud of his degrees. He worked hard, earned a steady paycheck, and trusted the system. But he struggled financially his entire life. He believed money was the root of all evil. He paid his bills first and hoped something was left to save. My rich dad taught me that money is a tool. He believed the lack of financial education, not money, is the real problem. He taught me to pay myself first, to use debt wisely, to acquire assets that produce income. He didn't want a paycheck. He wanted freedom. The truth is, if you follow the advice school gives you, get a job, work hard, climb the ladder, you might survive, but you'll never be wealthy. Because real wealth isn't built in the classroom. It's built by learning how money works, how taxes work, how debt works. The rich invest in their financial education. The poor invest in degrees that don't teach money at all. If you want to escape the rat race, you have to unlearn what school drilled into your head. Stop chasing grades and job titles. Start learning about cash flow, leverage, and freedom. That's the education that actually pays. Most people are taught to be independent. Do it yourself, they say. If you want something done right, do it alone. That mindset might get you through school. It might even land you a job, but it won't build wealth, because real wealth isn't built alone. It's built with a team. The employee mindset says, I'll figure it out myself. The entrepreneur mindset says, who can help me get this done faster, smarter, and bigger? That's the difference. The rich don't try to be the smartest person in the room. They surround themselves with people who are smarter in specific areas: accountants, attorneys, investors, partners, and yes, bankers. I have great CPAs. They know tax law better than I ever will. I have lawyers who structure my deals, protect my assets, and keep me in compliance. I have bankers who help me raise capital and leverage debt to grow. I have partners who bring skills I don't have. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's leverage. When I was in the Marines, we flew into combat as a unit. No one went solo. You had pilots, gunners, ground crews, strategists. Everyone had a role. It's the same in business. You don't go to battle with just a laptop and a dream. You build a squad, a team that helps you win. Trying to do it all alone is the fast track to burnout and small thinking. You'll be stuck working in your business instead of on it. That's why so many self-employed people get trapped. They're still trading time for money, just with more stress and fewer benefits. The rich know that building wealth is a team sport. They focus on their strengths and delegate the rest. They invest in relationships, not just skills, because money flows through people. And the more valuable your team, the more powerful your results. If you want to grow, stop asking, "How can I do this?" Start asking, "Who can help me do this better?" That shift will change everything. Wealth is built through networks, collaboration, and leverage, not isolation. Don't be the lone wolf. Be the leader of a pack. Right now, people are scared. The media says we're in crisis, recession, collapse, inflation. But I see something different. I see the biggest opportunity of your lifetime. Because history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And every time there's a financial crash, every time the world panics, wealth doesn't disappear. It moves. It transfers. And the question is, will it move to you or away from you? In 2008, I made more money than I'd ever made before. Not because I was lucky, because I was ready. I had the education, I had the mindset, I had the team. And while the world was focused on fear, I was focused on cash flow. I bought when others were selling. I borrowed when everyone else was hiding. And that single window of time changed the course of my financial life forever. Now we're here again. Inflation is rising. Markets are unstable. The middle class is getting squeezed. But that's how every great shift starts. The wealthy are already preparing. They're buying real assets. They're getting out of paper. They're positioning themselves to catch the wave while the average person drowns in panic, bad advice, and outdated thinking. This isn't a time to play small. It's not a time to wait and hope things get better. Hope is not a strategy. Action is. Education is. Leverage is. You don't need a high income. You need the right mindset. You need to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. You need to stop chasing security and start building freedom. Every recession creates millionaires. Every crash is a reset button. But it only works if you're prepared to press it. If you stay stuck in fear, clinging to your job, your savings account, your 401k, you'll miss it. But if you wake up, study, and act, you'll be part of the 1% who come out of this not just surviving, but thriving. This isn't the end. This is your beginning. The biggest transfer of wealth is already happening. The only question is, are you ready to receive it? If this message woke something up inside you, good. That means you're starting to see through the lies. The system wasn't built to make you rich. It was built to keep you obedient. But now you know better. You know what the rich do. You know how they think. And you know what you need to unlearn to finally get free. So the question isn't, can you build wealth in a recession? It's, will you? Will you take action? Will you educate yourself? Will you stop working for money and start building assets that work for you? You've seen how I did it. You've seen how I used debt, how I played the tax game, how I invested in real assets when others ran for the hills. I'm not smarter. I'm not more talented. I just learned the rules, and I used them. And so can you. Now, it's your turn. Don't just watch this and go back to business as usual. That's what most people do, and most people stay broke. But if you want a different life, you have to choose it. You have to change the way you think, the way you move, the way you play this game. Because whether the economy goes up or crashes down, wealth will always flow to those who know how to position themselves. So, position yourself. Prepare. And take control of your future. If this helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the poor work for money. The rich build cash flow. The time to start is now.